All right, cool. Now we've got our library of paths all set up. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you how to set up a bulletproof file. And we're going to use a method called tiered masking, where we set up everything inside the silo mask and sort of stack up masked layer groups within that. Now, the old way of doing this would be to just have masks with abutting edges on them by subtracting from them. So I'm going to show you a different method that involves setting up pixel layers at the bottom of every group. What this does, in comparison to the old method, is saves so much time and headache by eliminating the errors that occur with mask edges. It's really cool and really powerful. So I'll show you how to set that up now. So let's start with our silo mask. I'm going to hold down Command, set that as a selection. I want everything for the shoe to be within this layer group. Now, it's kind of jarring looking at this on the transparent background. So you can just create a solid color fill with like gray, put it behind it. It's just easier on the eyes and it's similar to the existing background. So let's start setting up our groups inside here. How many paths do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's set up 8 groups. Okay. On the top, on the very top of the stack is going to be the first group that we created. The first path that we created, which is the red sole. Set that as a selection, add it as a mask. Let's label it. Next one. We're going to go in the same order that we created these. Bubble sole, add it as a mask. Blue mid. Swoosh. Laces. Oops, that was lowercase. I want them uppercase. Right, so you might be asking yourself, why do I type these out in all caps? It's because anything that Photoshop creates in your layer stack here, it's going to create it with lowercase. I just like visually being able to see all the things that I created. Later, it just comes in handy for identifying stuff. I just did laces. Let's do liner. Add the mask. Tongue logo. And Air Max. And I'm going to create a folder right at the bottom containing my base file, and I'm going to call it base. So now you might be getting a little bit of an idea what I meant when I was talking about the fact that I didn't clip out the body of the shoe, because that's this base layer. Everything else is on top of it, so it's what you see through on the bottom. So this next step is going to really increase your file size. It's something to be aware of, and it's definitely a trade-off. There are workarounds later if you start to get slow performance on your machine, but I'm going to show you the best way to set up the file right now And keep that in mind. Later, you may have to pivot and do some things to deal with that, but this is the sort of bulletproof setup. I'm going to duplicate this base smart object into every single one of these folders. Make sure it goes in. Now, that's a lot of duplicates, but remember, this is duplicating that same smart object. Now, the liquefy is not within the smart object, it's applied as a smart filter, so we can change that independently on all of these layers now. I'm going to close these guys up. Now, without doing any other isolating, just as a demonstration, just open up a curve here and show you that now I can totally manipulate that base without touching any other part of the shoe. So now I have one more step of file preparation to do before we really get back into the retouching. What I want to do is manipulate the different parts that I've just set up independently, and I'll show you how to, instead of worrying about cleaning up edges and stuff like this with like a clone tool or stamp tool, I'll show you an alternative method that goes back to liquefy and will allow you to create super clean edges all throughout the shoe. Now what I want to do is set up a library of mask guides. I'm just going to call it mask guides. I set it up as a solid color fill. You can just give it some, just choose some color that looks good next to the adjacent area of the image. Something where I can really see this edge. I would do this for every element in the file. I don't really want something high key like white because the contrast difference between this and the blue sole is just too much and I can't really see that edge because I want to manipulate that. So that's kind of nice. Maybe orange for that. That looks good. So now you see all this stuff right here on the edge. I'm not even going to clean that up. I'm just going to sweep it under the rug, so to speak. Cool. So now that we're using our library of clipping paths in different ways, you can see that they're also serving dual purpose. They're not just the things that we needed to isolate the different parts of our image necessarily. They're providing us with a toolkit that we use throughout the whole process to do different things, in order to manipulate things, in order to visualize things. Yeah, and that just shows the flexibility of a really robust library of paths. So I know I have one for the tongue logo, but I'm not going to create that right now because I know just from experience of doing this stuff, that I don't think that I need that right now. So I don't need to label these really with the actual name. I'm just going to name them with a number. And then I like putting in a bunch of X's or pluses or something like that. Oops, I need to add a number there. And you'll see why I do this. It's just so that I can find these layers really quickly and easily once I go into Liquify. So anything that just stands out in the whole layer group. Okay, now there's one last thing that I need to do before moving on to the next step that is really cool, where we tie all of this together. What I need to do is rasterize these color fill layers. The reason I use the color fill layer is it's really easy for me to quickly choose a color to use. You can use your own method for doing that. It's not a big deal. You don't have to use a color fill. You just need to have a layer that is filled with color. And then I'm going to apply layer masks to those. So they're just pixel layers now based upon all the paths that we created. Okay, so after I've rasterized these, I might need to do a couple more steps to kind of trim off some of the parts of these guides that I made a little bit later to be able to see the edges that I want to see. But let's just start with the big payoff and start liquefying our base to clean up a lot of edges right off the bat. Go down to base, let's double click on Liquify, and I want to load that guide up as a backdrop, what they call a backdrop, but it's actually going to overlay the top. And you can see why I named these the way that I did, because they're really easy to find in here. So we're focusing on the base fabric area of the shoe, which is the largest real estate and has the most abutting edges on the liner, on the blue midsole, on the swoosh. So we can really do a lot of cleanup right here in Liquify. So you can just set these to 100%. You can see how these guides are now incorporated into Liquify. So you might be thinking to yourself, I know how he's going to use these. Let's get right into it, and I'll show you the power of using these guides. I'm actually going to start with the blue, which is right there, because this is going to get us quick payoff. All of this edge here, I don't even want to see. I want the fabric to meet the edge of that blue sole in a really clean way. So let's clean up this edge. I'm just going to sweep these like imperfect pixels under this guide. And now you can see why I've used this guide, so I can see in real time what that edge looks like, where the border between the two are, and I can see the results that I'm getting right here in Liquify. If I turn that off, you can see that I'm manipulating this whole pixel area, so that's why we use the backdrop. This almost feels like cheating a little bit, because we're manipulating the form of the shoe, but we're doing it at just the light enough touch that we're not really, lying about the structure of the shoe, but we're getting away with cleaning up these edges without doing anything in cloning, doing anything with Healing Brush. It's like the easiest thing in the world to do. But like, as you can see, all this prep time is now like really paying off, because we have such ease and flexibility to do these changes that were previously like really painful and tedious and used a lot of your attention and energy. Now I can just go through and it actually makes it kind of fun. So look at that edge. Now it's showing me the whole liquefy, the one that we did before previously on all the other stuff, but you can see how quickly that edge got cleaned up. Piece of cake. So let's move on to the swoosh. I mean, that's really what you want to do as a retoucher. Is so much of this work is so tedious and careful and painful. It's like we've had to develop these techniques just out of necessity, so we didn't like jump off the balcony. You know, you can only spend so many years of your life like cloning super carefully and, you know, cleaning up molecules. All right, let's move on to laces, I believe. Now, laces is tricky. I don't, I'm just gonna like sort of clean up the edges here where they're outside the mask. If nothing else, I'm just like making sure my mask was a little bit more accurate. I'm not gonna have any, you know, of these blue edges in my base, because if I want to like change the color of the laces or something later, I don't want to have to worry about like edges of blue that are outside my lace mask and that aren't getting picked up by that color change, for instance. I mean, this is essentially creating a setup where you never ever have to worry about bad edges. It's really nice. And so all right, I think that's everything. Hit enter, commit. Let's just take a quick look at these edges. Undo, redo. So that the stuff along the blue edge here still exists, but look how clean this edge is now. We've totally eliminated that weird glue part, and now we can move into working on the blue midsole. So let's take a look at the guide here. I may need to manipulate that a bit. So what we need to do is create another guide so I can see the edge of the top edge of the blue midsole. So I'm going to set a selection to the midsole one that I did. I'm going to invert that by hitting Command-Shift-I, and I'm going to do another solid color. I'll just use that. That looks good. See all this stuff we're going to clean up right here along this edge, and it's going to be super easy. So I have to do that rasterize step, apply the mask, call this O3B. Let's go in and liquefy this guy. I go backdrop O3B in front. Let's get right into it. It's just so easy. Now you want to change the brush size for liquefy so that, because if I try to push this up with this size of brush right here, you can see how I'm warping these pixels on the edge here. What I want to do is use a big brush. I'm going to undo that. And I want to move much more real estate up so it kind of holds that texture overall and it doesn't warp any of it. But I just love doing this because it just gets such good, fast results. This I'm actually going to go back a little bit smaller because I don't want to mess with this line on the bottom here. Just want to tuck this up. I mean, you could also be doing stuff like this with the traditional methods, but it would just take so much longer. All right, so we finished the top edge. I'm going to switch to, I can't remember what's what, but yeah, I can find it. Yeah, so I want to do the bottom edge. Now you can see here I'm kind of repairing some of the warp areas, you know, because it does degrade the image a little bit, but I mean it does such a great job of preserving the detail and the pixel fidelity. It's really an amazing tool. Okay, I like that edge. I'm going to commit that. Okay. And let's see how that edge magically cleaned. So this is looking still a little bit sharp because we've trimmed out. And don't worry, later we're going to feather that mask and this is all going to all of a sudden lock into place and look super natural. Not supernatural, but very natural. So let's move on to the bubble sole. Let's see if we have a good mask for the top and bottom edge of the bubble sole because we might need to make one. So we have a good one for the bottom, but let's do the same thing we did with this 3B. Set a selection to that. Bubble Soul mask. Invert that. Create a new one. Maybe a nice muted purple. Doesn't really matter. All right, same thing with Bubble Soul. Okay, so now I want to do the swoosh, so I'm going to create a new guide for that. So last but not least, I want to do a silo trim out where any of the elements that meet the edge of the silhouette, just want to trim those out, or at least preview those, make sure I don't have any edges that were introduced when I clipped, and I may have clipped a little bit outside. Let's just check it out. Okay, so I think we're good on our trim out. It's really cool when you can step back and look at this in a before and after, because it shows you how much you've done, because it's so granular. But you've really done a lot of work at this stage. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate up my base on top, delete that smart filter off it, so we're all the way back at our original shoe. I'm just going to rasterize it. I'm just going to call it a ridge, because it's nice to be able to go back to this and compare the work that we've done and how far we've got. So actually, it's probably best to put that inside the shoe. Well, let's see. I want to get the most bang for the buck here, but by hitting Command, comma, you can turn a layer on and off, which is nice for seeing before and afters. So you can see all the work we've done in the structure of the shoe, and it really amounts to even another, 5 to 10% step forward in terms of shaping and just cleaning up the shoe and getting it perfect. You can see all these edges. What I want to do now is just go through and add a little bit of feather. I'm going to zoom in so we can see how sharp these are. Start with the red sole. I do, for a lot of situations, like using the feather within the properties for the mask because it's dynamic. We can always go back and edit it. It's not baked into the mask. You don't have to worry about that. So let's just put 1 pixel feather on everything and see if that's not too much. I think the blue sole will really show that. So remember, blue sole is only intersecting. Oh, bubble sole, sorry. Bubble sole is only intersecting with the blue sole here, so now we'll really see if that feather is too much on the blue sole. See that edge? Now it's really starting to snap back into reality because we're softening those masks. You can also do that on the swoosh. Notice along the edge there, everything's because everything that we tucked under the above layer, you're now really seeing that edge because it's a new edge. So you have to go through and do the feathering to really bring it in back into a realistic look. I'm just going to do the Air Max 2, even though we didn't really do anything for the Air Max. We're going to sort of treat the Air Max logo separately because I have some ideas. We may need to sort of remake that logo or change parts of it. And then finally, on the silo mask, put that feather on there. We're going to have to deal with this edge because it's a little bit further back in space and it's a little bit more blurry back there. But overall, everything's sitting in pretty good. All right, so I love looking at the before and after because, especially once I get to this stage, I see how far, I've come with all of this front-loaded technical work, and now it really feels like it's all worth it because I've made these huge steps forward in the structure of the shoe, doing cleanup without ever having to touch the clone tool, even to this stage. And now I've got this set up that I can make changes to any part of the shoe at any time with very little thought, and it just takes seconds. I can change the liner color, just bring up a hue set it to colorize, and I can change it blue without having to do anything. So, this is really the reason that you want to tape off the whole house. Because once you get to this point, you've got all your work front-loaded, you've got all your technical stuff done, and now you can really start exploring in the creative aspects of it. Now, here's the thing. I've shown you this process with this shoe, but think of it this way. This isn't a shoe. This is a watch. This is a handbag. This is an athlete in a full athletic uniform. If you start thinking about your images broken apart in this way, you can rely on this system every single time. There are variables, but this is the foundation for any retouching that I do. And if you follow this method, you're going to be in complete control of your image every time.